Imagine being born in the depths of poverty, rising to the pinnacle of power, and then watching it all unravel amidst allegations of corruption and betrayal. Jacob Zuma's life is not just a story, it's a saga of resilience, ambition, and controversy. But is he a hero who fought for liberation or a flawed leader who succumbed to greed? Let's uncover the truth in his journey. Before the name Jacob Zuma became synonymous with power, controversy, and influence in South African politics, it belonged to a boy born into poverty in Nkandla, a rural village in the heart of KwaZulu-Natal. This is where Zuma's story begins, a world far removed from the political drama and presidential limelight that would define his future. Jacob Gedlesi Ilakisa Zuma was born on April 12, 1942, into a working-class family during the height of apartheid. His father, a policeman, died when Zuma was just 5, leaving his mother, a domestic worker, to support the family. Zuma's early years were marked by hardship. Without access to formal education, he grew up as an illiterate child, herding cattle and helping his family survive. In this world of extreme deprivation, young Jacob was exposed to the oppressive realities of apartheid. Nkandla, like many rural villages, was largely neglected by the apartheid regime, with its residents living in substandard housing and lacking basic services like water and electricity. Zuma's upbringing instilled in him resilience and resourcefulness, qualities he would later wield in the political arena. But it was not only his surroundings that shaped Zuma. His culture and traditions were equally influential. Born into the Zulu ethnic group, Zuma was steeped in the traditions of storytelling, oral history, and communal values. These influences taught him how to connect with people, a skill that would later become his political superpower. Zuma's early world may have been one of struggle, but it was also one that provided the foundations of his charisma, adaptability, and ambition. Zuma's call to adventure came during his teenage years as apartheid's brutality began to feel less like a distant shadow and more like a daily oppressor. The political atmosphere in South Africa was tense, with the National Party enforcing racial segregation, curtailing freedoms, and disenfranchising the black majority. Zuma, like many young people at the time, was searching for a way to fight back against a system designed to strip away his humanity. Zuma's journey began in 1959 when he joined the African National Congress, ANC. This was not just an act of rebellion, it was a step into a larger world, a step toward fighting for freedom and equality. Zuma's initial involvement in the ANC was through its military wing, Umkhonto we Sizwe, MK, or Spear of the Nation. MK was formed to carry out acts of sabotage against the apartheid government, and it attracted young men like Zuma who were ready to risk everything for liberation. However, joining the ANC came at a cost. Zuma, like many others, was forced to operate in secret, constantly evading the apartheid police. This dangerous life required discipline and cunning, but it also came with the camaraderie of a shared mission. Zuma found mentors in the ANC, older activists who taught him about political theory, the strategy of resistance, and the importance of unity in the face of adversity. In 1963, Zuma faced his first major test. While on a mission for the ANC, he was arrested by the apartheid police and convicted of conspiring to overthrow the government. At just 21 years old, Zuma was sentenced to 10 years of imprisonment on Robben Island, the infamous prison that housed Nelson Mandela and other prominent anti-apartheid leaders. For many, imprisonment would have been the end of the road, but for Zuma, it was a crucible. On Robben Island, he found himself surrounded by some of the sharpest minds in the resistance movement. Despite his initial illiteracy, Zuma took advantage of his time in prison to educate himself. He learned to read and write, studied politics, and became fluent in multiple languages, including English. Robben Island was not just a prison for Zuma, it was a university. a place where he transformed from a young activist into a disciplined and informed leader. When Zuma was released in 1973, he was not the same man who had entered Robben Island. He returned to the world with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to dedicate his life to the struggle for freedom. This marked the beginning of his rise within the ANC, where he quickly became a trusted leader and strategist. But Zuma's call to adventure did not come without challenges. As a young activist, he had to navigate the dangerous waters of apartheid South Africa, where every move could lead to imprisonment or death. The stakes were high, and the journey was fraught with danger, but Zuma's determination never wavered. This period of his life sets the stage for the trials, tribulations, and triumphs that would follow. From the dusty roads of Nkandla to the harsh realities of Robben Island, Jacob Zuma was no longer just a rural boy. He had embarked on a journey that would ultimately make him one of the most controversial and influential figures in South African history. After his release from Robben Island in 1973, Jacob Zuma stepped into a new, more dangerous chapter of his life. No longer confined to a prison cell, Zuma now found himself in a broader arena where the stakes were just as high. The apartheid regime was intensifying its crackdown on anti-government activists, forcing many in the ANC leadership to go underground or flee the country. Zuma, a rising star within the ANC, crossed the threshold into exile in 1975, leaving South Africa for the uncertain life of a freedom fighter abroad. His destination was Mozambique, a neighboring country that had recently gained independence and become a safe haven for the ANC. This move marked Zuma's first foray into the global stage of the anti-apartheid struggle. In Mozambique, Zuma quickly took on significant responsibilities within the ANC. He was appointed as the ANC's chief representative in the country, a role that required him to coordinate resistance efforts, recruit new members, and maintain communication with ANC leadership in Lusaka, Zambia. This was a pivotal moment for Zuma, as it tested his ability to lead under extreme pressure. During this time, Zuma also became deeply involved in the ANC's intelligence operations. Known for his sharp instincts and natural charisma, Zuma was instrumental in gathering information, identifying infiltrators, and ensuring the security of the movement. His work earned him the trust of senior ANC leaders, including Oliver Tambo, who was then the president of the ANC. However, life in exile was fraught with challenges. The apartheid government frequently carried out cross-border raids, targeting ANC bases in Mozambique and other neighboring countries. Zuma and his comrades lived with the constant threat of assassination. Despite these dangers, Zuma remained steadfast, driven by his commitment to the cause of liberation. The years in exile were marked by trials that would test Zuma's resilience and loyalty. One of the most significant challenges came in the form of internal divisions within the ANC. The organization was under immense pressure, both from external threats posed by the apartheid regime and from internal debates about strategy and leadership. During this time, Zuma's ability to mediate conflicts and build alliances came to the forefront. His fluency in Zulu, Xhosa, and other local languages allowed him to connect with a wide range of ANC members, bridging divides and fostering unity. He became known as a pragmatic and approachable leader, someone who could navigate the complexities of both the struggle and the personalities within the ANC. In the late 1970s and 1980s, Zuma's work took him beyond Mozambique. He traveled extensively, meeting with leaders and activists in countries like Tanzania, Angola, and the Soviet Union. These experiences broadened his perspective and solidified his position as a key player within the ANC. Zuma also received military training during this period, further equipping him for the fight ahead. One of Zuma's most significant roles was his involvement in the intelligence department of the ANC. As a senior figure in the ANC's Department of Intelligence and Security, Zuma was responsible for safeguarding the organization from infiltration by apartheid spies. This was a daunting task, as the apartheid government had a well-funded and sophisticated intelligence apparatus. Despite the risks, Zuma excelled in his role. Earning a reputation as a shrewd and effective leader, Zuma's allies during this time included some of the most prominent figures in the anti-apartheid struggle. Leaders like Thabo Mbeki, Joe Slovo, and Chris Hani worked alongside Zuma, each playing a crucial role in the liberation movement. These relationships would prove pivotal in the years to come as Zuma rose through the ranks of the ANC. By the late 1980s, Zuma's star was firmly on the rise. However, this period also brought with it some of the most significant challenges of his political career. As apartheid began to crumble under international pressure and internal resistance, the ANC faced the daunting task of preparing for a post-apartheid South Africa. This transition was far from smooth, and Zuma found himself navigating a complex web of politics, loyalty, and betrayal. In 1990, following the unbanning of the ANC and the release of Nelson Mandela, Zuma returned to South Africa after 15 years in exile. He was greeted as a hero by many, but the transition to open politics was fraught with difficulties. The ANC, long accustomed to operating in secrecy, now had to function as a legitimate political organization. This required new skills, new strategies, and new leadership dynamics. Zuma played a key role in the negotiations that led to the end of apartheid. He was part of the ANC delegation that engaged with the National Party government in talks to establish a new democratic constitution. These negotiations were tense and often fraught with mistrust, but Zuma's calm demeanor and negotiation skills helped to bridge divides. However, as the ANC transitioned from a liberation movement to a governing party, internal divisions began to emerge. Zuma's pragmatic approach often put him at odds with other leaders, including Thabo Mbeki, who was seen as more intellectual and technocratic. These tensions would eventually culminate in a bitter leadership contest between the two men. Zuma's rise was also marked by controversy. Allegations of corruption and misconduct began to surface, with critics accusing him of using his position for personal gain. These accusations would dog Zuma for the rest of his career, casting a shadow over his achievements and complicating his legacy. Despite these challenges, Zuma remained a resilient figure. His ability to connect with ordinary South Africans, particularly in rural areas, gave him a strong base of support. He was seen by many as a leader who understood their struggles and shared their aspirations. This grassroots support would prove crucial in the years to come, as Zuma faced some of the toughest battles of his political career. Jacob Zuma's ascent to the presidency in 2009 was the culmination of decades of struggle, leadership, and survival. It was also the beginning of what many describe as the most challenging chapter in his journey. The presidency was Zuma's ultimate ordeal, a position that tested his abilities, principles, and resilience under the immense weight of governance and public scrutiny. Zuma's rise to power was not without fierce opposition. His battle against Thabo Mbeki, South Africa's sitting president at the time, became a defining moment in modern South African politics. In 2007, at the ANC's national conference in Polokwane, Zuma defeated Mbeki in a dramatic leadership contest to become the president of the ANC. This victory came despite the backdrop of serious allegations of corruption and a highly publicized rape trial in 2006, from which Zuma was acquitted. The Polokwane conference was a turning point. It highlighted the deep divisions within the ANC, with Zuma positioned as a populist leader who resonated with the grassroots, while Mbeki was seen as elitist and detached. Zuma's charm, political instincts, and ability to mobilize support from rural areas and trade unions solidified his path to the presidency. Zuma assumed the presidency of South Africa in May 2009, inheriting a country grappling with deep inequalities, high unemployment, and widespread disillusionment with post-apartheid governance. His presidency was marked by efforts to prioritize economic transformation and improve the lives of ordinary South Africans. Programs such as the National Development Plan, NDP, aimed to address poverty and inequality, and Zuma pushed for infrastructure development as a means to stimulate the economy. However, Zuma's presidency soon became synonymous with controversy. Allegations of corruption followed him into office, with one of the most notable being the Nkandla scandal, where public funds were allegedly used to upgrade Zuma's private residence. The upgrades, which included a swimming pool and amphitheater, became a symbol of government excess and misuse of resources, leading to widespread outrage. As the corruption allegations mounted, so did public discontent. Protests against Zuma's leadership became increasingly common, with critics accusing him of eroding the country's democratic institutions. The judiciary, media, and civil society often clashed with Zuma's administration, highlighting the tension between his government and South Africa's democratic values. Despite these challenges, Zuma remained a polarizing figure. His supporters, particularly in rural areas and within the ANC Youth League, continued to view him as a leader who understood their struggles. This duality defined Zuma's presidency, a leader celebrated by many for his populist appeal, but criticized by others for his governance failures. The final years of Zuma's presidency were marked by increasing pressure, both from within the ANC and the broader South African public. His administration became engulfed in allegations of state capture, a term used to describe the undue influence of the Gupta family on government decisions and policies. The Gupta family, wealthy businessmen with close ties to Zuma, were accused of wielding enormous influence over state-owned enterprises and government appointments. Reports suggested that they had manipulated contracts worth billions of rands and even offered ministerial positions to certain individuals. Zuma's association with the Guptas became a central issue, leading to a series of investigations and judicial inquiries. The Public Protector's report on state capture, released in 2016, intensified calls for Zuma's resignation. The report alleged widespread corruption and recommended a full judicial commission of inquiry, which Zuma resisted for months before finally relenting under judicial and political pressure. By early 2018, the ANC, under the leadership of Cyril Ramaphosa, began to take decisive action against Zuma. Faced with the prospect of a no-confidence vote in Parliament and mounting calls for his resignation, Zuma announced his decision to step down as president on February 14, 2018. His resignation marked the end of a turbulent era in South African politics and paved the way for Ramaphosa's presidency. Even after leaving the presidency, Jacob Zuma's journey was far from over. In many ways, his post-presidential years marked a resurrection of sorts as he sought to redefine his legacy while facing significant legal battles. Zuma's legal challenges persisted, with the most notable being the arms deal corruption case, which dated back to the late 1990s. The case involved allegations that Zuma had accepted bribes from a French arms company in exchange for facilitating contracts. Zuma denied the charges, claiming they were part of a political conspiracy against him. In 2021, Zuma was sentenced to 15 months in prison for contempt of court after refusing to appear before the Zondo Commission, the judicial inquiry into state capture. His imprisonment sparked protests and riots in parts of South Africa, highlighting the enduring loyalty of his supporters, but also the divisions he had left in his wake. Zuma's health became a subject of concern during this period. He was released on medical parole after serving a fraction of his sentence, a decision that was widely criticized and legally contested. Despite his legal and health challenges, Zuma remained an active figure in South African politics, frequently addressing his supporters and critiquing his political rivals. Zuma's post-presidential years have been marked by attempts to reshape his narrative. He has portrayed himself as a victim of political persecution, emphasizing his role in the anti-apartheid struggle and positioning himself as a champion of the poor. This narrative has resonated with many South Africans who feel left behind by the country's economic and social policies. At the same time, Zuma's legacy remains deeply contested. For some, he is a hero who dedicated his life to the liberation of South Africa. For others, he is a symbol of corruption and mismanagement, whose presidency undermined the country's progress. After years of navigating political storms and corruption scandals, Jacob Zuma's reward was not simply power, it was the opportunity to shape South Africa's future. However, his reward came with significant costs, leaving a legacy that remains both celebrated and criticized. Zuma's presidency enabled him to build a loyal political base, especially among the rural poor, who saw him as a man of the people. Programs like the Rural Development Strategy and social grants expanded under his administration, directly benefiting millions of South Africans. These initiatives solidified his image as a leader who understood the struggles of ordinary citizens. In international circles, Zuma worked to strengthen South Africa's global influence. His administration championed the country's role in the BRICS bloc: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, promoting economic collaboration with emerging economies. South Africa's participation in BRICS symbolized its aspiration to be a voice for developing nations on the world stage. Despite these accomplishments, Zuma's legacy was overshadowed by the corruption allegations that plagued his presidency. The Nkandla scandal, the Gupta family's influence, and the larger issue of state capture became the defining narratives of his tenure. Critics argue that Zuma's presidency deepened inequality, weakened state institutions, and fostered a culture of impunity. Zuma's reward, his power and influence, came at the expense of public trust. His ability to navigate political crises and avoid legal accountability for years demonstrated his resilience, but also revealed the fragility of South Africa's democratic systems. Zuma's resignation in 2018 marked the beginning of his transition from a president to a political elder, yet his post-presidency years were far from a quiet retirement. Instead, Zuma's road back was marked by ongoing legal battles, attempts to protect his reputation, and a continued influence on South African politics. The Zondo Commission, established to investigate state capture during Zuma's presidency, became the focal point of his post-presidency life. The commission uncovered extensive evidence of corruption, implicating Zuma and his allies in manipulating state institutions for personal and political gain. Zuma refused to cooperate fully, claiming the commission was biased against him. This defiance ultimately led to his imprisonment for contempt of court in 2021, a landmark moment in South Africa's efforts to uphold the rule of law. Zuma's imprisonment sparked violent unrest across parts of South Africa, particularly in his home province of KwaZulu-Natal. Protests, looting, and destruction of property highlighted the deep divisions in South African society. For his supporters, Zuma's incarceration was a symbol of injustice and a betrayal of the liberation struggle. Despite his legal troubles, Zuma maintained a significant political presence. He frequently addressed his supporters, critiqued his political rivals, and defended his legacy. His loyalists within the ANC's Radical Economic Transformation (RET) faction continued to advocate for his policies and vision. Zuma's journey entered a new phase as he sought to redefine his legacy and rebuild his reputation. His resurrection was not a dramatic transformation, but rather a calculated effort to regain public favor and assert his relevance in South African politics. Zuma positioned himself as a victim of political persecution, alleging that his legal troubles were part of a broader conspiracy to undermine him. This narrative resonated with segments of the population who felt marginalized and disillusioned with the political establishment. Zuma frequently invoked his role in the anti-apartheid struggle, reminding South Africans of his sacrifices and contributions to the country's liberation. In his public appearances and statements, Zuma portrayed himself as a champion of the people. He criticized policies he deemed elitist and out of touch, emphasizing the need for economic transformation and land redistribution. Zuma's identity as a Zulu leader played a crucial role in his resurrection. He leaned heavily on his cultural heritage, presenting himself as a custodian of Zulu traditions and values. This strategy helped him maintain strong support in KwaZulu-Natal, where his influence remained significant. The final stage of Zuma's journey reflects the complex and multifaceted nature of his legacy. Zuma's elixir is not a single accomplishment, but rather the enduring impact of his life and career on South Africa's political landscape. Zuma's presidency left an indelible mark on South Africa. While his administration is often associated with corruption and state capture, it also highlighted the challenges of addressing inequality and poverty in a post-apartheid society. His populist appeal and emphasis on rural development brought attention to marginalized communities, even as his governance faced widespread criticism. The debates surrounding Zuma's legacy have contributed to a broader conversation about accountability, democracy, and governance in South Africa. His presidency served as a cautionary tale, prompting reforms aimed at strengthening state institutions and preventing future abuses of power. On a personal level, Zuma's resilience and ability to navigate political crises demonstrate his remarkable survival skills. His journey from a herd boy in rural Nkandla to the highest office in the land is a testament to his determination and adaptability. For Zuma, the elixir is also the loyalty of his supporters, who continue to view him as a hero and a symbol of resistance against perceived injustices. This enduring support underscores the deep divisions within South African society and the challenges of reconciling a nation still grappling with the legacies of its past. Jacob Zuma's life is a hero's journey unlike any other. From the dusty roads of Nkandla to the highest office in the land, his story is one of triumph and tragedy. But the question remains, was Zuma a hero who lost his way, or a man undone by his own flaws? The answer lies in the eye of the beholder.